Why don't we go next to Alex from San Diego? Alex, you're on the air.
Wow. Hello. I didn't actually expect to be chosen. Um, so I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I've long thought that the most important issue in politics today is the impact that money has on politics. And then if you solve that, a lot of the other issues would naturally solve themselves over time, as people's natural instincts are very reasonable in general. Do you agree that this is the most important issue, or do you see something else as the most important issue today?
I believe that there is a sort of triumvirate or a three-headed monster of sorts that are really the three most important issues systemically. And you hit on one of them. Money in politics is one aspect of this. Climate change is a sort of systemic and structural issue where if cities end up underwater, it's not going to really matter what our opinion about abortion is. So it's sort of like whatever issue you care about, if we don't deal with climate change, we're not going to be able to get that fixed. And then thirdly would be how our elections are run, meaning that they're mostly first past the post, and for the presidency, it's an electoral college system. So all those three issues together, if we could fix campaign finance, money in politics, if we could get to some kind of transferable vote and get rid of the electoral college, and then if we could deal with climate change, then we would sort of be set up to start dealing with like, okay, I care about education. Here's how I'll be an activist on education. You might care about, trans rights. Here's how you can get involved in that. I think that you are right in identifying one of the three major issues.
See, that's kind of my point, though. I feel like a lot of those other issues can, in many ways, be reduced down to the money and politics issue, like climate change, for example. If there was some way to resolve campaign finance, then over time, candidates would begin to more accurately represent the will of the people, hopefully or ideally. And most people want to do something about climate change.
Yeah, I don't disagree in that you're saying that over the long term that we might get to some kind of equilibrium, but it would be a long time because even if you quote dealt with money in politics, fossil fuels are still advantaged in a number of different ways, including by the sheer market power that they have in ways that are not directly connected to money in politics. So I'm with you about the long term. I think if we wanted to more quickly do something about it, I would still put these three issues sort of as the three-headed monster that needs to be dealt with.
I see. Thank you for that. I have one other very minor thing, if you don't
Sure.
mind. Um, the other thing is I've had this idea, and I don't know if anyone else has talked about it. I've never heard it talked about, but it's related to like how to address worker executive pay disparity. Why, in addition to also being able to increase taxes on very wealthy people and and wealth in general. And I realize this idea may be unpassable, but nonetheless, I want to know what you think of it.
Sure.
Why not tie the tax rate for corporations to the difference between like the highest paid executives and the median pay of the company, such that the bigger that disparity, the more the company pays in some additional tax. And if they want to reduce that tax, they have to improve average worker pay.
It's a super interesting idea. And so to give an example, the way it might work would be if the CEO earns 100 times more than the lowest paid person, you pay a 12% corporate tax rate. But if the CEO earns 1,000 times that of the lowest paid person, your tax rate goes up to 40%, something like that, right? I mean, not those numbers, but that's the
Yes.
idea. Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I think there's a couple problems. One is I don't know how something like that even comes close to passing, but let's ignore that, right? Because we're talking about whether it's a good idea. I think you still, because the corporate tax rate, first of all, applies only to certain businesses, any self-proprietorship, LLC, S corporation, those are passed through, so the corporate tax rate doesn't even make a difference to them. Unless you deal with that and the fact that you can still deduct and loophole your way down to zero tax liability, you would need to still combine it with an alternative minimum tax for corporations. You'd have to do a bunch of other stuff. It's interesting. Practically speaking, I don't see any way that it would pass in the next 20 years, but I think it's a really interesting idea.
Okay, thank you for that, dude. That's all I have. Keep up
All
the
right.
good work. I like the
Thank you
show.
very much. Guys, this is week 3 of really strong phone calls. Really, really strong phone calls. Not going to lie. I'm we've really kind of hit our stride, I guess I would say. Let's go to Chandler from Indianapolis. Chandler from Indianapolis, you're on the air.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, David. First time calling, long time listener. Hate to be that cliche,
Thank you.
but yeah. So I just have a question about COVID in general. So I live in Indianapolis, and just recently the mask mandate was lifted for the city. City County Council lifted it on Monday night, and something that really concerns me is that uh, the percentage of the people who live in the city who have gotten the vaccine, at least like one shot, is only like I think it's like 36 percentage, less than 40%.
Yikes.
I'm not really sure what you would think for, or what let me just rephrase this. So what would you think would be a reasonable percentage for a mask mandate to be lifted for a city, um, like the size of Indianapolis? I don't know how it is with Boston or how it is up there.
Yeah, I don't, I'm not an epidemiologist or an immunologist. So basically I'm going by what I've read those experts say, but it seems quite reasonable to me that as you approach 50% immunized, that certainly masks can start coming off, and we're seeing masks come off in most places, and things seem to be more or less going okay among the vaccinated. The unvaccinated are seeing increased hospitalizations in some places, like in Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, I think at 50%, you can start to really do a lot of things.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would definitely agree. And honestly, at this point of the pandemic, I would believe that, some things are kind of common sense. Like if you're going to go to Walmart, I would probably wear a mask. If you were to go out into a park, don't wear a mask unless there's like a crowd for whatever reason. Yeah, so
Right.
I think that common sense would definitely be kind of what we all need to be listening for.
Yeah, and remember that
In
the
today's
CDC
day and
has said
age.
that once you are vaccinated, essentially every activity is low risk without a mask. But certainly, if there's a situation in which you still would be more comfortable with a mask, I say wear it. Why not?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let me see.
Well, that's all great. I'm
Um,
going to let you go because we have so many people, but that's a great question, and I'm hopefully things will continue to improve in Indianapolis.
well, I appreciate you taking the call.
All right.
Keep on doing what you're doing, man.
Very good. Thank you so much. Let's take a really quick break. If you're holding, don't hang up because we are taking more calls momentarily. Stay with us. I've often had trouble falling asleep when I'm staring at my computer or phone screen late into the night, and that's partially because blue light from screens suppresses the sleep hormone melatonin, and blue light can generally cause things like eye strain or even headaches, but it has not been an issue for me since I was sent a pair of Blue Blocks glasses, which block out blue light. Unlike all of the low quality mass produced blue light glasses out there, Blue Blocks are actually evidence backed, made under optics laboratory conditions. These are the blue light glasses you can trust, and they have something for everybody. Lenses for daytime, lenses you wear before bed. They have a prescription version, non-prescription, readers, over 40 different frames to choose from. These are the ones I picked out. I never have problems with it anymore. It's great. Go to blueblocks.com/Pakman or click the link below, and you'll get 20% off when you use the coupon code Pakman20, and there's free shipping worldwide on orders over $115.